of 3 families in a way that none of us, because we are so blessed and we all have more than 2 pairs of shoes, might not recognize. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Wow. Now I gotta preach. It is amazing how God knows what people need and how He'll use these paths that we never really noticed to make sure that people receive the things they need. And that's really one of the things that we're going to talk about here today. And I do think it's a great encouragement that the things that are happening in the church are making their ways outside these walls. That we are, in fact, pointing to Jesus in the things that we're doing. And the ladies' ministry, that sounds like a great event. Guys, we need to have one of those. We need to have a basket with like a truck. Or like a bow and arrow for hunting, right, Sean? That's what we need. Okay? How sad would you be when you had to give it away to someone else? We could rig it. Just let Sean win the bow and arrow, and somebody else put a card in. Like, I know a family who really needs a bow and arrow. That would be torturous, wouldn't it? That would be great. Next year. All right. Well, let's begin today's message with do you see what I see? And so we're looking at some of the structures of the Old Testament, how these things point to Jesus. So let's begin with the temple and priests. When Jewish worshipers came to the temple in the Old Testament, they would arrive at a structure that looked something like the following. And a few months ago, I was able to show you a picture up on the screen and kind of walk you through it. And so I don't want to take a lot of time with that today. But basically, when they arrived at the temple, they would come to an outer court. And the outer court is where all the common people, all the people were able to come and gather and worship. And beyond the outer court was the inner court, and that's the place where the priests would go in and they would do some of their ceremonial things, but the regular folks could not go in there. This was just for the priests. And then, of course, the deepest place in the temple was called the Holy of Holies. And this is the place that only the high priest could go, and only one time each year he could go in to make atonement for the sins. Okay? Now, Jews who would come and gather at the temple, they would bring a sacrificial animal to the bloodstone of the altar, where the priest would take that animal and he would lift it up onto this altar. There was a bloodstone up there, and there were very specific directions. It had to be made of, it was 500 cubits, and this thing had to be made of stones that were uncut. And so very specific directions on how to make this altar. So the priest would take the animal and put it up onto the altar, and typically that would be a lamb. But it might not be a lamb, because those folks who were less fortunate couldn't afford a lamb. They could bring, for example, a pigeon. And so